think there's a lot of trying to find yourself and look after your little person as well as yourself. There's a lot of exhaustion, like you're just a bit depleted really, aren't you? I think there's a lot of people feeling lost and trying to rediscover who they are, but also not having any time and energy to do that because you're looking after a little person.
Hello and welcome to the Empowered Woman podcast. This week I'm joined by clinical psychologist, yoga therapist and founder of Mindful Mamas, Dr. Gráinne Turley-Gibson. Gráinne is a mum of two, and in this episode she talks about how her identity and priorities shifted after she became a mother. Gráinne talks about how validating it was to discover the name for the transition into motherhood, but she said she was surprised that she had never come across the word matrescence, considering her extensive background in psychology. Good morning, Gráinne, and thank you for joining me on my podcast, The Empowered Woman. First of all, just let's start. If you tell us a bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
Yes, okay. Well, thanks so much first for having me, Ciara. It's lovely to meet you and to be here. So I'm a mom of two. I've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and that's very much my center of my life right now. And I'm also a clinical psychologist by background and a yoga therapist. So in terms of my professional background, I like to kind of blend psychology and kind of spiritual and yoga therapy worlds together. But right now
Lovely.
I'm a mom kind of 4 days out of 5.
So tell me, Gráinne, when did you first come across the word matrescence?
Yeah, it's getting momentum now, isn't it? I remember having a chat with my sister. I've got a twin sister, and we were just having a chat over, I think over Skype, because I was living in London at the time and she was back in Ireland. Um, and I can't actually remember if it was her or me that said this word matrescence. And we're like, oh, it has a name. Like, wow. um, and I remember, so it was probably when I was a mom, maybe a year in, I already had like a 1-year-old. So it wasn't like, as soon as I give birth or even before. Um, and it just felt really validating, like, oh yeah, of course it has a name. It's such a big, significant event or time. Of course it should be kind of marked and named in that way. So yeah, I think that's the first time I heard it. But I was also like, wow, how have I not heard this before? In lots of different areas.
Yeah.
Like there's lots of things I think when you become a mom, you're like, oh, you start seeing things differently. You start like even noticing playgrounds and things around that you've not noticed before. You're like, oh. um, but I trained as a clinical psychologist. I'd done a full doctorate in like different developmental periods and lifespan psychology, and had never come across that word, which shocked me a little bit. But then just got me really curious and interested and wanted to learn more and quite passionate about it, really.
And so then when you embarked on that journey of wanting to learn more, what did you come across? And, did anything surprise you?
Um, well, really interestingly, well, I think it's interesting. When I became a mom, I actually specialized in adolescents. So I was working with teenagers and their mental health. That's the area I specialized in. And when I worked with teenagers and their families and their parents and carers, I would talk a lot about, okay, this is a really important developmental shift. This is when your young person is moving away from the family, they're finding out who they are for the first time, they're developing that self identity. Who am I in this world? How do I fit? What are my values? And how is that maybe different to what I've grown up with and my family values? And I talk about a huge shift in their hormones and their body and emotional dysregulation. We know you would just expect more kind of big emotions in the teenage years. And it was really interesting to me that when I started to learn more and talk to people more and read more on matrescence, it's exactly the same. Like exactly the same. You have a huge body, hormones are changing, your identity is shifting in a very similar, big, momentous way of who am I now? You're not discovering yourself for the first time in the same way, but you're rediscovering yourself after having had a little person, and you're going out into the world with a little person in tow and rediscovering what your values are. They're maybe shifting a little bit or who you are. You're also having emotional dysregulation, an expected normal amount. There's big emotions in any kind of change and shift. Um, so yeah, that really kind of stood out to me. I was like, oh, this whole area that I specialize in with teenagers is actually really applicable and really similar because it's a really similar kind of developmental time in terms of your identity and who you are.
Do you, having, you know, done so much work and study and research in the area of developmental psychology, was there any part of you, because I have to say, as a woman, I feel let down. Now, I don't know by who,
Yeah,
because, it's the system that we're living in, the patriarchal system that we're living in. That's why we
yeah,
don't know about matrescence.
yeah,
But
yeah.
did you feel let down, or did you go, what the hell is going on?
I don't know if I'd use the word let time, but I definitely felt shocked and surprised at stuff that I was learning for the first time. Like I said, I studied psychology and I hadn't even come across the term before in that time. Um,
Mhm.
how did I feel? Yeah, maybe a little bit let down, but I think more just like shocked and surprised that there's this whole big, massive transformation that we're not really supporting enough, or there's just not people talking like you're talking about. This is brilliant, but there's just not people talking about it enough or giving name and space to it. Um, so yeah, maybe similar.
Yeah. And so let's go back. Cast your mind back, and you've just come home from the hospital with your newborn, and all these new sort of feelings and everything's going on. And do you remember that moment, or do you remember a moment when something shifted? Describe how that experience was for you.
Okay, so this is 5 years ago now. I do. I actually have a very good, clear memory of it, and most of it is like love and joy and amazingness. And
Mhm.
um, I tried to have a home birth with my first, but as births do, lots of things happen. And Lily came nearly
Yeah.
in the car, and we were into hospital. Thankfully, we were 10 minutes from the hospital in London, so so it was very quick, kind of fast birth. But I remember the moment of the next day getting home in my little love bubble, just like my husband there, inviting us in, and it felt really amazing. And at the same time, because this is what really stood out to me actually when I became a mom, is there can be two polar opposite things happening at the exact same time. So it felt amazing, and I was in love bubble, and it was
Yeah.
all like bliss, like pure bliss, that tap of like high raw oxytocin fueling your body, amazingness. And oh my God, I'm so sore right now. I can't even walk. Like I'm
Yeah.
wrecked. What just happened? My mind, I remember actually now that you asked, because I haven't thought about this in a while. I remember my mind trying to process what had happened. Like it was going like so fast, trying to like process what had just gone on. And the nurse talking to me and
Yeah.
saying something. And I actually remember saying to her, "You're going to have to say that again because my mind's so busy. I can't actually follow what you just said. Like, can you repeat that?" She kind of looked at me. But yeah, I just remember so much kind of processing in all the good stuff as well as the like kind of trying to catch up. Um, yeah, it's just so big, isn't it?
It is. It's huge. And I'm conscious. So you work with mums as well, and
Yeah,
you would
I
have a
do.
lot of
Yeah.
access to knowledge and information and stuff. Um, how do you, do you notice with mums that you work with how they navigate this time in their lives, or are they equipped to navigate this time in their lives, as opposed to how you would have been able to with the knowledge that you had?
Yeah. So I remember I had actually just finished my yoga therapy training as well when I became a mom. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I won't have all the psychology knowledge, but I'm so glad I have just finished all this nervous regulation stuff like breath work, somatic processing
Mm.
and movement. I had literally just filled my brain and body learning all about this stuff, and I meditation. It's like, I'm so glad I've just poured all of that into myself because I really need it right now. Like I really need it. And that didn't mean I didn't struggle at times. Of course I did, but I had the tools and techniques and things to draw on. And I just remember being so kind of thankful and grateful to my future self. I didn't do that in preparation for postpartum. But these things happen, don't they? Yeah, you just make these choices
Yeah.
and suddenly you're like, oh, that's probably just what I needed. So I remember being really, really glad. Yeah, I remember being really glad that I'd done that because I really needed it. And I remember thinking, oh, we should have like some kind of 6-week program where all moms should just get access to therapy, yoga therapy, rest, regulation techniques. It's just really lacking. And um, yeah, I just
Mhm.
remember being really grateful that I had some of those things to tap into.
And how would you find so mums that you would have coming to some of your retreats or your mum's circles,
Yeah.
and they're in the midst of this transition? Do you find in general that most people are coping through it, or do you find that women are lost? What's your experience?
Yeah, I think, of course, there can be a mix, but I think there's a lot of overwhelm. I think there's a lot of anxiety. I
Mm.
think there's a lot of trying to find yourself and look after your little person as well as yourself. There's a lot of exhaustion, like you're just a bit depleted, really, aren't you? And I think,
Mm.
yeah, I think lost is a really good word, actually. I think there's a lot of people feeling lost and trying to rediscover who they are, but also not having any time and energy to do that because you're looking after a little person.
To do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So we run circles for mums. It's actually not new mums, it's all mums, just to give the space
Yeah.
to be able to come and feel those raw emotions, because I guess that was something I was really aware of. Like I was so in tune with my emotions, but I was really aware that they were really heightened and big. And I was like, we need more spaces to come and to be able to feel these raw emotions that go alongside, feel the anxiety, the overwhelm, and the fear and the panic that comes in this period, alongside the love and the rush and the amazingness. So that's why we created our circles, actually, was to give mums a space to just come and be, and to have that space for yourself to start to process some of that stuff. Because there just isn't really any windows or time, is there, in especially in the early, like, year in particular, for yourself to process any of that stuff.
I
Um,
know.
and it's when those actually quite normal emotions come, it's when they're not processed that they get stuck in our body, and then that's when, more bigger problems arise, really. So that was the passion behind our circles. That was the kind of want that myself and my sister, why we created our mama circles, was to give women space to come and be and feel, really feel all those emotions that are there. Just a space to do that, because we recognized we needed it ourselves. We created something basically that we
Yeah.
would want to have gone to ourselves. Yeah. So there's lovely, beautiful meditation in there. There's mindfulness, and there's some gentle somatic movement, but really like mindful of the postpartum body. There's yoga nidra, which is just rest, basically beautiful guided rest. And there's the sharing circle where we get to feel all those raw emotions in that kind of raw form. Because thinking back, actually, now that you asked me that question about 5 years ago when you first became a mom, what I really remember feeling is the rawness. It was so raw. Like, I just remember feeling really cracked open emotionally, like so vulnerable. And I
Yeah.
think you need to be in a way to kind of get through that big
Mhm.
transformation. You need to be cracked open vulnerably to be able to look after a tiny human being in that, like, total capacity when they're that young. But it doesn't mean it
Yeah.
doesn't take its toll on you. That really raw vulnerability is,
Mhm.
um, it's massive to kind of to sit with that. So to have
Yeah.
spaces to just come and be and say, God, are you feeling like that to someone else? Yeah, that's how just to have that kind of connection with someone going through the same thing, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, it is. And it's so important to give that space for people to name it and to feel, oh, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. Because
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
so many mums when they're at home by themselves and they're
Yeah.
like, I'm doing this wrong. The baby's crying all the time. I feel
Yeah.
crap. I'm tired
Yeah.
all the time. What is wrong? But
Yeah.
it's actually, it's all part and parcel, and you're not doing
Exactly.
anything
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, yeah. It's so easy to think and these are similar themes that come up. I'm wrong or I'm broken or there's something fundamentally wrong here
Yeah.
because I'm not doing it right or whatever it right is. Um and
Yeah.
I think that's because also when we are in that transformation, because it is a transformation, like once you come through it,
Yeah.
when we're in that transformation, you're so vulnerable, all those kind of parts of yourself that you're doubting, the self-critical part gets louder. I definitely felt that myself. I'm not doing that right. And you're comparing yourself to
Uh-huh.
these maybe Instagram perfect families or moms or
Yeah.
whatever, and it increases that self-doubt. Um, yeah. So I feel like that self-critical voice can be really, really loud actually in the because you're also learning so many things. I remember having that really steep, oh my God, I'm learning how to do so many things at the
That's
same time
it.
here. You're learning how to breastfeed. I remember not even knowing how to change a
Yeah.
nappy, like for a start. There's so many different things that you're learning. And always
Yeah.
when we learn something new in life anyway, regardless if it's in motherhood, there's always a little bit of that kind of self-doubt. Am I doing it right? But when you're doing so many things that
Yeah.
mean so much that are really important, like keeping a baby alive, I just think it's a perfect kind of it's a perfect storm, for that struggle or those self-critical voices to get louder. And you're not sleeping. So just throw that into the mix.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not sleeping it's a torture, because your body can't rest, your body can't reset, your nervous system stays up here.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just makes everything feel crap. But do you think
Yeah.
the naming of it, and there's a bit of momentum behind it now, we've seen
Yes.
on
Yeah.
Instagram, that
I have, yeah.
giving the name to it and giving it space and going, you know what? All of you mothers, this is completely normal. This is what
Yeah.
happens. Your brain is
Yeah.
rewiring, your body is
Yeah.
changing, and you're not doing anything wrong. And
Yeah.
everyone will feel it differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what I actually think? Because I know some people, there's controversy about putting a name on things and labeling and all of that. I actually think it's really helpful. I think naming it like that is actually really
Yeah.
validating. It validates people's experience. And it's not saying, like you said, this is
That's
what it
it.
looks like and you're the same as that. Everyone's unique in their experience.
Mhm.
It will be completely different because you're a
Yeah.
completely unique person and you bring a whole story and life before you become a mum. And at the same time, I think just naming it like the basic outline of what it might look like and what might be the common things that you go through that are completely normal, that everyone feels
Yeah.
and does, is so, so validating. It has to be because it stops all of those things that you've just mentioned. It stops you thinking, I'm broken, I'm the one doing it wrong. There's something fundamentally at flaw here. I'm failing in some way. It stops your mind racing
Yeah.
to those explanations. You're like, oh, it's actually matrescence. It's one of those developmental phases that
Yeah.
it's gonna be really, really hard. And at the same time, hopefully that will open up other areas and supports and kind of avenues for people to go and access. I'm hoping this whole momentum that started with it. Well, I mean, there's more people working in the area
Yeah.
and providing the support and providing, just everyday things that could be helpful.
I think that's really important that you say that, the validation of your experience, but that everybody else's experience will be different. Because I
Yeah.
remember like letting out a sigh of relief when I read about it. And I was like, kind of felt held by
Yeah.
something, even
Yeah.
though I was sitting, at my kitchen table on my laptop by myself reading about
Yeah.
it. But I felt,
Yeah.
wow, this is incredible. This is the intelligence in our bodies
Yeah. Yeah.
rewiring us so we
Yeah.
can now cope in this next phase.
It's so amazing, isn't it? And all the brain studies are coming out that your brain is being properly rewired to look after your little person, um,
Yeah.
and your new you. But yeah, I think when you get
Yes.
properly
Yeah.
validated in that way, it is like getting a hug, isn't it? It's like someone saying, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Of course you're feeling that way. Of course those emotions are coming up for you. Of
Yeah.
course you're struggling in that way. It makes total sense because you're going through this massive change and shift in identity. So yeah, I think the more that it's named and labeled and shared and talked about can only be useful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully. Um, did your outlook on life change after having children?
Completely. Yes, in every way. So pre-kids I was living in London. Now I'm living in Greystones by the sea. So it completely shifted the environment I wanted to be in. Pre-kids I was working a 9 to 5 uh NHS job, which I absolutely loved, like brilliant team, loved the client work. Now I'm stay-at-home mom 4 days a week, and I realize how much of a privilege that is. A massive, massive privilege, and not everyone has that choice. But that's what I've chosen when my little people are small. Um, I also really wanted to like I was in a city. I felt really like I want to get back into nature. That was a massive shift. I started
Yeah.
noticing even when I was in London, all I wanted to be was in the parks or near water. Um, and just what was important to me, like I'd spent, you know, 10 odd years training to be a doctor or worked in the NHS for over a decade. All of that was still important to me and I still love my work, but it was absolutely number two. The little person at the
Hmm.
time, and now two, I've got two. They just had to be, and I wanted them to be number one. And everything was going to kind of
Yeah.
work around that for me. I didn't know what that was going to look like, but yeah, everything shifted, and my relationship with my husband shifted. I used to say that I was going to be um, he was going to be the stay-at-home dad, and I was going to be the career woman, which is completely the opposite of what's happened. um, so I think I know people in me now just like absolutely have that reaction. um, but I think it has to. I think it's such a big thing if you allow it to. If you
Yeah.
can lean into all of the change that's happening. Actually, what I think anyway
That's
is
it.
it just allows you to tap into your authentic self and who you are and who's under there anyway,
Yeah.
maybe trying to get out in different ways. um.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
And talk me through the changes there that you mentioned, how your relationship changed with your husband, and were you surprised by it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely surprised by it. So I have a how long are we together? I met him when I was 20, so near like 18 years. We had a really kind of strong, stable relationship. Um, and I was shocked at the struggle we had, particularly in the first year post baby number one. Definitely took me by
Yeah.
surprise. Didn't expect it at all. Obviously, you read and you hear about that's kind of normal and
Hmm.
but we had such a strong
Yeah.
relationship that I have to be honest, it shook me. Um, but I think there has to be a negotiation. Suddenly, you can't just go and do things. There's time and energy banks that are one now, and there's has to be a negotiation just to go and do
Mhm.
something. All of that has to be ironed out and worked through. Um,
Yeah.
if I'm on, and I was breastfeeding, which I love. Like I love breastfeeding, still breastfeeding now. But it does mean that there was a little bit of, even though this is what I was choosing and I wanted, there's a little bit of resentment at the freedom that comes when he can just go out and
Yes.
not be tied to the 2 hour feeds. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
there's definitely challenges, I would say, which we work through and can only make you stronger as a couple, I think, when you're able to have those difficult
Mhm.
conversations and, name how you're feeling and navigate through them. But yeah, it was definitely a challenge.
And did your husband find it as much of a challenge?
I think he did in his own way. I think we both found like, yeah, I think he did in his own way.
Yeah.
Early parenthood challenging yeah, it did, and just negotiating our relationship and what that looked like now. I think was, I think he would say, yeah,
Yeah.
in his own way, he found it challenging.
And through the matrescence transition, which we're both still in, I mean, let's
Yeah.
face it, um, Did your husband notice the transition or any shifts or changes in you?
Um, yeah, do you know what I would say? Well, I don't know what he would say, but my guess is I definitely learned that I was more of a people pleaser than I thought. And even though that had been something I'd kind of been aware about a bit before, I think when you become a mom, suddenly stuff that you kind of let go or is kind of okay is suddenly not okay. And you want to be an advocate for your
Yeah.
child. And you also want to be a role model for your daughters who stand up and use their voice. So
Yes.
I think I started to get really good at my boundaries. And I started to say no a lot more to myself, to him, to other people. And that's definitely was hard initially. I think it's an ongoing thing, isn't it? It's not something that you suddenly do and then you've achieved. I think
Yeah.
for me anyway, it's a process of learning what my
No.
boundaries are and
Yeah.
communicating them in an assertive way. Um, but I think he would probably say that he noticed that shift in me, and I didn't necessarily get it right at the start. Might have communicated it probably in ways that wasn't as could have been done better. But yeah, I'd say he probably noticed that shift.
I think in, our relationships and who we it's not that we're pretending to be somebody, but it's how we carry ourselves or learn to be
Yeah,
in a relationship. And then when something shifts and you get a chance to go, oh, hold on a second now, there's something else more important to me. And then the
yeah,
other person is like, ah, it's really interesting how
yeah,
you then kind of come back together and navigate your way through. Because I remember a lot of stuff with my husband initially, and I'm like, what? Like, what the hell?
yeah,
Who are you? Who am
yeah,
I? What are we doing here? I feel like we're
yeah,
just living together and raising a child. And
yeah,
it's kind of only in the last year or so that we're like, we've gotten to take a breath together.
yeah, yeah. But that's it, isn't it? It's who am I and who are you? Because you are both changing. Like they go through their own
Yeah.
developmental, and then it's all who are we together. So I almost feel like I don't know. Like you need to find out
Yeah.
who you are again first, and then you also need to find out who are we now that we're together, but these different people, and how do we work in
Yeah.
that way? And it takes time. I think maybe like there has to be an unraveling of some way first before you can find your way through it and renegotiate what that looks like. Um, so it takes time, but it also takes
That's
like
it.
choosing to connect back in and choosing to make the time, and
Yeah.
you really have to prioritize it, I think, because there's so much um it's so hard to get the time when you've got little people.
Yeah.
So
It
I think you just
is.
really have to make
Yeah.
that time and prioritize you both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Um, I'm just thinking, so in school, we learn about adolescence and we learn about puberty. And
Yeah.
it's, oh gosh, if I can think back, that's like first to third year science. So everybody
You've got
learns
very good
about
memory.
those things.
Yeah.
um, and then obviously you dive deeper in because I did biology for Leaving Cert. So you dive in a
Yeah.
bit deeper
Yeah.
into the reproductive systems and hormones. But it's all very surface level. And obviously we know a lot more now than we did 25 years ago when I was
Yeah.
doing my Leaving Cert.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm really off the thinking now where I am in my journey about learning about matrescence that why aren't these things in our school books as well?
Totally.
All of the things that happen to us as
Yeah.
men, as women, and then you go through life and it's not that you are prepared for something because you never know how you're going to deal with or react to something as it's happening to you,
Yeah.
but that you have a level of knowledge there that you
Yes.
can start to navigate your
Yes.
journey.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Or there's just something to refer back to, isn't there? Like when it starts happening, you're like, oh, this is that thing that I read about. Or this is that thing that we discussed, or it might even just open a conversation up at home, for example, if it's something that you read about or learned about in school,
Yeah.
you might go home then, because I think that there's so much that can be led from the home as well. It might be a conversation with mom or dad, or
Yeah.
but it's just part and parcel of our normal life. I also was feel like that about emotional regulation. I feel like we're back in the day about how we
Yes.
respond and be with emotions, and I feel like that should be taught in schools just in the same way. We've
Yeah.
come along so much in terms of our knowledge and how we are and our being. Because I think actually matrescence and motherhood, it's a lot about feeling and being with our emotions, so whether that's in with your partner or whether it's being triggered by your little one. Um, and I feel like that should be just taught really early on, or at least, like you said, with matrescence, there should be some kind of acknowledgement, discussions, conversations about it, so that when all these things start
Yeah.
happening in our lives, we have some kind of reference point. And like you said, it's not going to be here's what's going to happen,
That's
ABC. We
it.
can't do that. It's all individual.
Mm.
But it's given people um it's just validation from really early on. Actually, this is going to be a challenging period. This is what you might experience. Um, yeah, it will happen. I
Yeah.
feel like
And
there's
we've a long
momentum
way to
going.
go.
But I feel like there's momentum
Yeah,
going.
fingers crossed.
When we first wrote our website a few years ago, we have something on our website about matrescence. Oh my god, it has a name, like there's a line in there. And I feel like when we first wrote that, it wasn't like
Yeah.
I'm seeing it everywhere now, which is really like, it's really good. It's really hopeful.
It's
Yeah.
great. And hopefully it gets the same momentum that menopause got when we first started talking about
Yes.
menopause.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
know I still don't believe that perimenopause and menopause get the recognition that they deserve or that everybody knows what they are. But
Yeah.
we're getting there. And let's add matrescence to the list as well.
Totally. And it's all women's stuff, isn't it? It's all women that stuff that's being forgotten about. Which is
Yeah.
really sad if
Yeah.
we sit and think
Yeah.
about it. And at the same time, it's all been, there's a light shining on it now, and there's so many great people starting to use their
Yeah.
voice and speak about it and share, which is really powerful.
So do you, if you were to describe matrescence to a woman who has just become a mother and whatever they're feeling, in that transition, what would you want her to know?
That's a nice question. What would I want her to know? I would want her to know that it's a transformational time. That it's going to be huge. There's going to be highs and lows. There's going to be times where it feels absolutely amazing and times where it feels really, really low. I would want her to know that all emotions are normal. All the highs and lows and all the anxiety and fears and overwhelm are all normal. I would want her to know that um, it's a shift and it's an identity change. And with that comes an unraveling, or with that comes challenge or difficult things to navigate through. And that's okay. And that's normal. Um, I'd want her to know that there'll be times maybe when her body feels different and changes, or when her hormones are all over the place, or when she maybe doesn't like her body, or there's just shifts there. And that's part and parcel of going through it. Um, I'd want her to know that there's a ripple effect out. So there'll be a ripple effect in your relationships, probably every relationship in your life, not just your husband or your partner or your wife. There's going to be, a ripple effect out, and to expect that, and um, to go through it with an open heart as much as you can, and to be kind to yourself, and everyone else that you're walking through it with. That's what I want her to know. Actually, that the most is to, you know, bring that kindness and that softness to yourself as you work through a challenging and yet amazing time of your life.
And we talk about identity shift, and that's part of the transition. And I remember when I became a mother and reading a lot of other people's kind of reading about their journeys and them saying that, oh, you'll find your way back to yourself, you'll get your old self back. And I kind of at the time I was like, I don't feel very changed. I don't feel like I've lost any part of me. Now, maybe that was just because of my journey, in that it took me 7 years to have my little boy, to get pregnant. Um, and so it was like, okay, amazing. We did it. This is what I've wanted for so long.
Yeah.
And so I didn't feel lost in it. I felt fully immersed in it. And that was
Yeah.
where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And so I still wonder, do we ever fully find our way back to who we were before babies? Or is that part there and always will be there, but we're now integrating new parts of ourselves? I don't, does that make
Yeah, I
sense
know
even?
exactly what you mean. Yeah, yeah. No, it totally does. And I think what you've hit on to start with is everyone will do it differently because you might have had 7 years to prep and think and
Yeah.
process compared to the next person who was absolute surprise and a shock. And everything in between. There's so many
Yes.
different journeys, isn't there?
Yeah.
But my
Yeah.
belief anyway, is that I don't think we go back to who we were. And I don't think we're meant to. I don't think that's like this kind
No.
of back and, I don't really agree or identify with any of that. But I do think whether it's subtle and slow or whether for you it's kind of quick overnight or whether it goes over and back a little bit, whatever that journey looks like, I do think we we are a new person. Our identity is changed. Now, the essence of who you are stays the same, I think. There's always an essence of you, right? There's always an
Yeah.
essence of here,
Yeah.
Warnia, that is you, that's in there, that we tap back into, that we might need to
Yeah.
relight by doing something for ourselves to remember that little part of ourselves that we want to bring forward again. Um, but
Yeah.
I think we're meant to evolve and change and integrate the old parts with the new parts. I don't think we're meant to stay the same. I think we're meant to allow motherhood to change us for the better. I think we go through so many shifts and we learn so much about ourselves and who we are in relationships. And I think if we allow it, it can be one of the biggest transformational periods actually of our life. So I think there's
Hmm.
huge opportunity in there and, there's huge growth and blossoming that can come from it. And you see lots of women um, that make changes that maybe go into work in the motherhood space after or do something completely different. If you,
Mm.
it is a time that I think you can really listen to your heart and tune into what it's telling you. And, we all have constraints and things that we need to do and put dinner on the table. But, I think there's opportunity in there to allow the changes to happen and to just get in touch with the more authentic you. Um, I think there's always
Yeah.
potential and opportunity for growth in times of challenge and pain. That's what I always kind of remind myself of. Even though this could be really hard and challenging right now, there's always a potential for growth at the right time.
Yeah. That's it. And just finally, what would you say, or what would be your kind of advice to a mum who might be finding it a bit challenging, um, and isn't really, in a community or somewhere where she can attend mother circles or,
Yeah.
stuff like that, and doesn't have support around her?
Yeah.
What are things that maybe she could do for herself at home to, regulate the emotions, the nervous system, and just to know that everything's going to be okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's rare to have like mother circles or things right on your doorstep. I think there's so many small things that we can do day to day, actually. And maybe I'll just share a few that I find helpful myself.
Mm,
So
yeah.
getting outside into the garden, even if I can't, those days where you might not be able to even get dressed or get everyone dressed and get out, which is lovely, like getting
Yeah.
into nature is amazing. But actually, if I can just get into the garden on those hard days, that shifts everything for me. And that can be a challenge some days, depending on what's
Yeah.
going on. But getting out into the garden and
Mm,
stopping and noticing and looking around me and maybe just taking like 3 deep breaths, noticing my feet on the ground.
yeah.
And that actually, I know it sounds really simple, but it can be really challenging depending on what's going on in your mind or your nervous system or your body that day.
That's yeah,
Little pockets in
yeah,
every day. So, like having your cup of tea or a cacao if you drink it, or even your coffee or whatever it is, like just giving yourself, letting the laundry and the mess sit and giving
yeah,
yourself a couple of minutes while babies, even if they're sleeping on you, have a safety flask if you're having a hot drink, but even if they're on you, or depending on what age they are,
yeah,
if they're playing for a few minutes, like give yourself those little micro moments of regulation. And they
yeah,
really do make a difference. If you think they're not going to, but they actually do. There's so many micro moments of stress that builds up throughout the day. If we can fill up
yeah,
our micro moments of regulation, it does make a difference. It starts to balance things out a little bit. So getting into the garden, giving yourself those little moments for a drink, your body. And they like, even if I can't get away from the kids, I've got a day where, I've got the two of them and I'm just moving my body. Like it might even be like a few shoulder stretches. I always notice stress in my body here. This is where I hold a lot. A lot of people might hold it
yeah,
in their jaw or their hips. Like little
yeah,
movements, even in the midst of the chaos, can just help bring back that balance a little bit. And then the more that you get used to building them into your everyday routine, you look forward to that little moment where I'm going to do that little thing for myself.
yeah,
And it really doesn't need,
yeah,
it doesn't need to be a big, like it doesn't, I talk about meditation. It's really not sitting down and meditating in the quiet. Like these little things are
no,
meditation. I used to love um,
yeah,
breastfeeding and just closing my eyes as I was feeding, but that was like,
yeah,
felt really kind of sacred and lovely. um, so it's trying to weave all of these things into your everyday and not make them like a big thing. Make them part and parcel of your everyday routine. But give yourself permission. I feel like as mothers, we don't give ourselves permission to do these little things. Like I
yeah,
remember again, as soon as my first went down to sleep in the early hours of the nap, I'd start running around the house frantically trying to do all the washing and the laundry. It took me a few weeks to like realize actually when baby's sleeping, that's my time to do something for myself. But I had to go through that process of giving myself permission. Like I really did. There was no one else going to give me
yeah.
the permission.
That's all for this week. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying these conversations and want to be part of a growing community that supports women, then check out the Women's Collective by BU Coaching. It's a coaching-led community where you'll get group coaching webinars, weekly videos, and the wisdom and knowledge to help you thrive in all stages of life.